Hello and welcome to Inside Edition examines the Titanic. On April 15, 1912, the luxury ocean liner struck an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sank to the deep ocean bottom. It was the Titanic's maiden voyage, and its captain called the ship unsinkable. It's estimated that more than 1,500 people died in the accident. Since that day, what happened on the Titanic has intrigued many, leading to explorations, record-breaking movies, and tragic attempts to dive close to see the wreckage.
Rare images of the Titanic at peace on the ocean floor were released this week. Some of the footage, shot during the 1986 expedition to the world's most famous shipwreck, has never been seen before by the public. The expedition's leader, Robert Ballard, described what he saw.
And then we came in on the starboard side of beam of the bridge, and the first thing I saw coming out of the gloom at 30 feet was this wall, this giant wall of riveted steel that rose over 100 and some feet above us. I never looked down at the Titanic. I looked up at the Titanic. Nothing was small. And as we rose up its side, because we had to abort the dive at that point because we were taking water into our batteries, and as we rose up after that first dive that lasted just minutes, we began to see the portholes, and it was like people looking back at us. It was pretty haunting, actually.
It took researchers decades to find the doomed ocean liner. The research expedition's engineer explained why it was such a challenge.
Titanic lies in a part of the ocean that you would describe as an abyssal plain. It's over 13,000 feet deep in the ocean. The water is near freezing temperatures, and probably the biggest challenge is the remoteness of the location, and in particular the harsh environment with regard to the pressure that our equipment is exposed to. So every square inch or centimeter is being pressed into a smaller space by the crushing pressures of the ocean at this kind of depth.
And what the expedition's cameras captured wasn't just rusting metal. It was a graveyard. When the Titanic sank on her maiden voyage in 1912, some 1,500 people perished in the disaster.
You were physically seeing their remains, which were eaten away and the bones dissolved, but sitting there were pairs of shoes. After the Titanic sank, those that went into the water that didn't have life jackets died of hypothermia, and their bodies came raining down. So it was like tombstones all over the ocean floor. A mother's shoes with her baby shoes. It was very powerful imagery to see where these people came to rest. And again, reinforcing that you were at a very sacred site where so many people died. And I think everyone wonders in their own mind, if I were there, what would I have done? Would I have, done anything to save my life? Or would I have, like the builder of the Titanic, Andrew, gave up his life jacket to a female passenger and went and sat in the smoking room and sat there and never budged till the ship went down with him. So it was just amazing play of humanity.
The Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution made the footage available to mark the 25th anniversary of the release of James Cameron's Titanic motion picture.
It took decades to find it, but the Titanic is disappearing once again. Metal-eating bacteria, salt corrosion, and deep ocean currents are all taking their toll on the haunting wreckage of one of the world's most famous ships. Divers from Triton submarines examined the Titanic for the first time in 14 years.
First impressions, it's big. It is a big wreck. I wasn't fully ready for just how large it was.
They found it is disappearing at an alarming rate.
Probably the most shocking area of deterioration was the starboard side of the officers' quarters, where the captain's quarters are. The captain's bathtub is a favorite image among Titanic enthusiasts, and that's now gone.
The ocean liner's grand staterooms have also been reclaimed by nature. The elegant ship made its maiden voyage in 1912. Billed as unsinkable, it hit an iceberg in the North Atlantic Ocean and sunk. More than 1,500 people lost their lives in the disaster, and another 2,200 escaped. Over the years, items salvaged from the ship have been put on display and up for auction. From portholes to purses, watches to fine china, the items show the glitz and glamour the ship was known for. They also offer a fascinating peek into the lives of its passengers. But with the survivors now passed on, the wreckage remains the last standing testimony to the Titanic.
The future of the wreck is going to continue to deteriorate over time. It's a natural process. These are natural types of bacteria.
Now, thanks to the forces of nature, it could be gone in only a few decades, returning to the sea once and for all.
It's a race against time to capture all the information we can about the Titanic before it's completely lost to the ocean.
A new digital map of the Titanic is giving people a never-before-seen view of what is perhaps the world's most famous shipwreck. It took more than 200 hours and over 700,000 images of the sunken luxury liner to create a 3D digital map of the wreckage. They were created in 2022 by Magellan and Atlantic Productions for an upcoming documentary. They told CBS News.
All these scans together allow us to put together an absolute digital replica in every detail, every rivet of the Titanic. And that's extraordinary.
The Titanic is the watery grave of about 1,500 people who perished when the ship hit an iceberg and sank in 1912. Researchers hope these scans will help them uncover exactly what happened to the ship that never completed its maiden voyage.
And this photogrammetry model is one of the first major steps to driving the Titanic story toward evidence-based research and not speculation.
The Titanic wreckage has been explored many times since it was found in 1986, but the deep waters have deteriorated the vessel over more than 100 years since the disaster. These scans help preserve the history that's still left.
Coming up, items from the Titanic hit the auction block. The prices they fetch may astound you. Stay with us.
An amazing piece of history.
This walking stick is a relic from the Titanic, and now it's at the center of a family dispute. The cane was owned by a wealthy first-class passenger on board the doomed ship, which sank 107 years ago after it hit an iceberg. The cane has a unique feature.
So this lights up.
That battery-powered tip proved invaluable when an heiress named Ella White found herself on lifeboat number 8 after the ship went down.
Bring in your oars over there! Heroically, she took this cane, this stick, lit it up, and spent the night waving it back and forth in an effort to attract a rescue ship.
In his famous book, A Night to Remember, author Walter Lord wrote this about Mrs. White.
She had appointed herself a sort of signalman. She had a cane with a built-in electric light, and during most of the night she waved it fiercely about.
Now the cane is being put up for auction by a descendant of White's. It's believed it could fetch as much as $500,000. But another descendant, Samuel Hoving, is disputing ownership. He says the cane was in his father's possession for years until it mysteriously vanished.
I grew up with this item in the umbrella stand of the foyer where we grew up here in Manhattan. My father was very proud of it. It became missing from my father's apartment in the 70s.
Are you not protesting this auction?
I am wholly protesting the auction and will contest it and try to halt this sale.
Looks like the dispute over this historic artifact from the Titanic is turning into a fight to remember.
The $500,000 estimate for that cane proved to be wrong. It sold at auction for just $50,000 in 2019.
Ever wondered what was served on the Titanic as it made its first and last transatlantic crossing? A menu from the ill-fated vessel is up for auction. Henry Aldridge & Son is selling a water-stained piece of paper that detailed what first-class passengers could have eaten on April 11, 1912, just 3 days before the ship's demise. Some of the culinary options included oysters, salmon hollandaise, spring lamb with mint sauce, and duck with port wine sauce. A pocket watch owned by a 34-year-old Russian man who was immigrating to the United States and did not survive the disaster is also being auctioned off. The auction company says the watch's movement is heavily corroded as a result of immersion in salt water. The Hebrew lettering can still be seen on the front. Over 110 years later, Titanic artifacts still fascinate many people. A previous Titanic Menu sold at auction in 2018 for £100,000, or about $122,610. And a violin, played as the ship went down, sold in 2013 for $1.7 million. Wallace Henry Hartley, the violin player and band leader, did not survive the sinking. His instrument was found strapped to his body when it was recovered 2 weeks after the tragedy. More than 1,500 people died when the Titanic struck an iceberg on April 14, 1912, and sank the next day.
So how much did that menu sell for? Just over $100,000. Coming up, Titanic the Movie. That's how many of us became familiar with just what happened on the ship as it sank into the frigid Atlantic Ocean. We'll take you behind the scenes of how they shot that massive, record-breaking movie.
It's 25 years of Titanic.
I'm the king of the world!
The timeless love story turned Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio into global superstars, even as far as China. Something Deborah found out when she traveled to Shanghai soon after the film's 1997 release.
How many times did you see Titanic?
3. Now on the film's 25th anniversary, lost footage is surfacing.
I don't know the steps.
Neither do I.
I cannot believe Titanic is 25 years old.
You can't believe it? I'm in denial.
Victor Garber played the architect of the ship that was supposed to be unsinkable.
She's made of iron, sir. I assure you, she can.
He says no one knew they were making a classic.
There was a lot of talk about how this was going to be Waterworld 2, which was not a successful movie. And we didn't know. I mean, it was long hours. It was a very hard film to make.
I played Madeline Astor.
How do you do? Actress Charlotte Chatton says watching what Kate and Leo had to endure made her quit Hollywood.
How hard Kate had to work on this role was difficult to watch. I did notice just how physically arduous it was for the actors. And it was a little bit masochistic, I felt.
It was worth it. Titanic ended up being #1 at the box office for 15 weeks in a row, raking in $2.2 billion worldwide. Now, just in time for Valentine's Day, the Oscar-winning blockbuster is back in theaters today nationwide.
Even though people have seen this 10, 20 times, they're going to want to go back in theaters and really relive that experience.
And it's the 25th anniversary of the release of the blockbuster movie Titanic. And after all these years, the debate continues. Could Rose have saved Jack by making room on that floating piece of wood? Now, director James Cameron is conducting a scientific test to answer the question once and for all.
It's been a burning question for a quarter of a century.
Jack.
Couldn't Kate Winslet have moved over just a smidge to make room for Leonardo DiCaprio on that floating piece of wood so they'd both survive Titanic? Leo was even teased about it by Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie.
Did you mention it at the time? Were you like, should we make the door smaller?
Like I said, I have no comment.
Now, director James Cameron is setting the record straight in an upcoming Nat Geo special, Titanic 25 Years Later. Cameron sent 2 stunt actors into an ice-cold pool to simulate what Jack and Rose went through in the North Atlantic waters. They had similar body types to Leo and Kate, and there was also a hypothermia expert on hand since the water in the pool was 56 degrees.
He got up on there, and he immediately went into the really strong
shaking, shivering.
It's not the first Titanic test.
Let's see if we can both get on this thing.
A decade ago, Mythbusters came up with this conclusion.
If they had used Rose's life preserver and stuck it under the door, they could have survived on top of that door.
Now James Cameron is doing his own test to find out once and for all if Jack would have lived if Rose had just been a little more generous with her personal space.
It's pretty interesting.
So through his testing, James Cameron found that if they had both laid on the wooden plank, they would have been partially submerged and both would have likely died before the rescue boat arrived. But had they been able to balance and get their upper bodies out of the water, they both may have survived. In a less scientific test, Kate Winslet and Stephen Colbert gave it a go as well. Watch.
You just should have tried harder to get on that door.
On the 20-year anniversary of the movie Titanic, Kate Winslet finally puts to rest that nagging question. Did Jack have to die?
Okay.
During an appearance on The Late Show, Kate and Stephen Colbert recreate a whole new ending.
Promise me this, Rose.
What?
You'll let me get up on that door with you.
Come on, darling, there's room for two.
Now you know.
Coming up, so what does star Leonardo DiCaprio think of all this? We'll show you after the break.
Is Leonardo DiCaprio finally answering one of the great mysteries of our age? Could Jack have survived the Titanic?
Jack.
Leo was just asked about it as he promoted his new movie, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, with Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie.
Oh my gosh, I thought it. I remember bawling my eyes out when I was a girl.
Well, I'm going to go back and look now. Certainly.
That is the biggest controversy, I think,
Ever.
in modern cinema history. Yeah.
No comment.
Did you mention it at the time? Were you like, should we make the door smaller? So
Like I said, I have no comment.
For 22 years, fans have wondered, why didn't Rose move over just a little and make room for Jack? The show Mythbusters tested it out for themselves.
If they had used Rose's life preserver and stuck it under the door, they could have survived on top of that door.
Here's another burning mystery. Was Kate Winslet's character actually floating on a door? Eagle-eyed fans are now noticing it wasn't a door at all, but a door frame. Here is the scene from the movie, and here is a photo of the first-class lounge from the real Titanic 107 years ago. Look at the door frame. It's the spitting image from the movie.
Like I said, I have no comment.
While items from the real Titanic have been auctioned off for quite a bit of money, some of the movie props also have a hefty price tag at auction, including that panel Jack and Rose floated on. Watch.
One of the most talked about props in movie history has sold for big bucks.
Then, $575. Mr. Green, congratulations.
An auction was held for the broken wooden panel that Rose floats on in Titanic, but was never quite big enough to save Jack. The piece sold for $575,000. With auction fees, that price tag was over $700,000. But can you really put a price on such a legendary piece of film history?
After the break, people have always wanted to explore what remains of the Titanic, but a recent expedition made huge headlines as it turned deadly. We'll have the details coming up. Welcome back to Inside Edition Examines the Titanic. In June of 2023, the Titan submersible was taking a group of tourists on an expedition down to the ocean's bottom for a view of the Titanic wreck. They had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for the journey. Then they hit trouble.
The search in the Atlantic Ocean in the same area that the Titanic sunk 111 years ago. In that disaster, more than 1,500 people were killed. Today, the Coast Guard launched a rescue mission 13,000 feet below the surface for a submarine carrying 5 people. It went missing during an expedition to the Titanic.
A submarine carrying tourists to see the wreckage of the Titanic has gone missing. The Boston Coast Guard is currently conducting a search and rescue mission about 400 miles off the coast of Newfoundland.
We began immediately to mobilize assets to search both the surface of the water, search from the air, and then also launch equipment that would enable us to detect any vessels under the water.
Retired British Rear Admiral Chris Parry.
The only sort of hope I think one has is that the mothership will have a standby craft that can actually go down and investigate immediately and see what's going on.
The Titanic rests 13,000 feet deep below. That is roughly 2.5 miles underwater.
There's lots of debris around, so trying to differentiate with sonar in particular and trying to target the area you want to search in with another submersible is going to be very difficult.
The submersible is owned by OceanGate Expeditions, a private company that recently began expeditions to view the historic Titanic wreckage. British billionaire Hamish Harding is reportedly on board. Yesterday, he said poor weather conditions had delayed the trip. A weather window has just opened up, and we are going to attempt a dive tomorrow. Harding is a well-known adventurer. Last year, he flew on Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin's rocket ship. The clock is ticking if there is any hope of finding the Titanic submersible.
This particular submersible is advertised to have 96 hours of survival time.
One possibility being talked about is that the sub got too close to the Titanic. It may have gotten snared in the wreckage. By the way, this was going to be the only manned trip to the wreck this year because the weather in Newfoundland has been the worst in 40 years.
A glimmer of hope today in the search for the lost Titan mini sub.
Rescuers say they heard banging sounds in 30-minute intervals.
Sonar buoys dropped into the ocean by Coast Guard aircraft picked up the sound of banging. Could it be the trapped crew hammering on the side of the sub? Rescue crews are now scrambling to locate the source of the banging, with oxygen in the sub expected to run out Thursday morning.
We need to have hope, right? But I can't tell you what the noises are. But what I can tell you is, and I think this is the most important point, we're searching where the noises are.
Colonel Terry Wirtz's friend Hamish Harding, a veteran explorer, is one of the 5 men on board the Titan.
He would know the only way to communicate with the outside world is through banging on the wall, and that sound travels very well through the ocean.
The owners of the Titan are coming under fire today for refusing to have the sub tested by an independent regulatory body. Bart Kemper is one of 30 engineers who wrote to OceanGate, the company behind the Titan, urging them to have the sub tested.
Are you saying there was no regulation of the Titan?
To my knowledge, that is the case.
I got these from Camper World.
CBS correspondent David Pogue was stunned when he saw some of the equipment on board earlier this year.
We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on! Yup, unbelievable but true. The Titan submarine is controlled by a Logitech game controller that you can find at any electronics store. We found this one today for $43. This toggle makes the sub go up and down. This one from left to right. And could the window on the sub be compromised? A former employee sued OceanGate, claiming the window wasn't rated to go below 4,000 feet. The Titanic is sitting on the ocean floor at 12,000 feet, 3 times deeper. Some previous passengers we spoke with say the sub was plagued with technical issues.
Every trip I've taken with them, the first thing you hear is, "We've lost communication." I know that's the key phrase in this story, is they've lost communication.
OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush, who is on board the stricken submersible, seemed unfazed by the safety concerns.
At some point, safety just is pure waste. I mean, if you just want to be safe, don't get out of bed, don't get in your car, don't do anything. At some point, you're going to take some risk.
Alan Newman made the journey last year. He says he was willing to risk it all for a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
It's not a Disney ride, right? These are pushing the limits, and they don't go always as planned.
Are they trapped inside the wreckage of the Titanic? That's the fear today as the Titan submersible remains lost.
This is so terrifying because the clock is really ticking.
If that sub is still intact and those passengers are still alive, they have less than 2 days worth of oxygen left on board.
The U.S. and Canadian Coast Guards are scanning the ocean using C-130 reconnaissance planes, dropping sonar buoys to listen for any sign of life.
They're listening for tapping or voices because at this point that may be the only clues that they have, if they can hear that at all.
The 5 men on board have been identified as British billionaire Hamish Harding, Shahzada Dawood, said to be one of Pakistan's richest men, and his 19-year-old son, Suleiman. Titanic expert Paul Henry Nargeolet, and the man who built the sub, Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate.
Wow.
They are sealed in the 21-foot metal tube about the size of a minivan. There are no seats, no room to lie down, no food or drink, but there is a toilet.
The crew closes the hatch from the outside with 17 bolts. There's no other way out.
The Titan began its descent at 8 a.m. Sunday, but lost contact with the support ship, the Polar Prince, less than 2 hours later. The round trip to the wreck of the Titanic should have taken 9 hours. When they didn't return at 5:40 p.m., the Coast Guard was called in.
All of our efforts are focused on finding the sub. There's about 40 hours of breathable air left.
That would mean they run out of air at 5 a.m. Thursday.
If the sub is trapped in the Titanic, it will take an extraordinary effort to bring it to the surface. First of all, it's pitch black down there. The temperature is 39 degrees Fahrenheit. The pressure is 110 times greater than on the surface. No diver can go that far, and no other sub on the planet can go that deep.
You know, throwing a bunch of tourists in a new sub that, you know, was just created over the last several years, it's not looking good.
It is always in the back of your head. I could die here.
Mike Reese, a well-known TV writer and producer for The Simpsons, paid $250,000 to make the journey last summer. That's his wife posing for photos in the sub before the descent.
It's small but comfortable. If you can imagine a minivan, if you tore all the seats out.
Listening, it sounds very claustrophobic.
We were all kind of like-minded people on an adventure, and so there was never a moment's discomfort.
CBS Sunday Morning correspondent David Pogue has also been on board the Titan.
What do you think happened to the Titan?
There's only 3 possibilities. One is that the Titan imploded on its way down. Another possibility is they just lost power. They made it to the bottom and they are somehow stuck there. The third possibility is that they successfully made it to the surface, but without power, they have no way of telling us where they are.
When we come back, the fate of the Titan submersible. We'll tell you what happened.
A catastrophic implosion, that's how the Coast Guard is describing the Titan disaster. They believe the mini-sub blew apart as it descended down to the wreck of the Titanic Sunday, killing the 5 men on board instantly.
Our most heartfelt condolences go out to the loved ones of the crew.
The Coast Guard broke the grim news today after a remote-controlled rescue sub discovered the remains of the Titan on the ocean floor, just 500 yards from the historic wreck of the Titanic.
The initial thing we found was a nose cone, which was outside of the pressure hull. We then found a large debris field. Within that large debris field, we found the front end bell of the pressure hull. That was the first indication that there was a catastrophic event.
But they did not find the bodies of the 5 men who were on board the Titan and said they may never be found because of the, quote, incredibly unforgiving environment.
OceanGate, the company that operates the submersible, says in a statement, "Our hearts are with these 5 souls and every member of their families during this tragic time." The men all signed a waiver that mentioned the possibility of dying 7 times. CBS correspondent David Pogue read a portion of it before he boarded the sub last year.
An experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body
and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death.
The sub's designer and pilot, Stockton Rush, who perished in the disaster, is facing more criticism today. He claimed that he built the sub with the help of top-notch engineers.
We worked with Boeing and NASA and the University of Washington.
But today, Boeing issued a statement saying it was not a partner on the Titan and did not design or build it. And the University of Washington says their physics lab was not involved in the design, engineering, or testing of the Titan.
You'll have two people sitting here and two people here and the pilot back there.
When he gave this tour to a previous Titan passenger, he admitted he broke rules when he built the sub.
This General MacArthur said, "You're remembered for the rules you break." And, you know, I've broken some rules to make this.
Is it possible that the 5 people on board the Titanic submersible that exploded didn't die instantly as was first believed? New audio has just been released, and on it you can clearly hear what sounds like someone banging, maybe with a wrench, every 30 minutes. Stephen Fabian on the horrifying possibility this raises.
Did the 5 passengers on the mini submarine lost on a journey to the Titanic make a desperate effort to contact rescuers? You are hearing a just-released recording of a mysterious sound picked up during the search for the ill-fated submersible Titan. It is heard for the first time in a new documentary, The Titan Sub Disaster, Minute by Minute.
It's rhythmic, it's repetitive, it feels organic. You can very easily imagine it's someone banging the hull of the Titan sub. It doesn't sound random. It doesn't sound like some sort of piece of rubbish knocking around the bottom of the ocean, and that's why it's so intriguing.
The world held its breath last summer after the Titan was lost with 5 men on board, including the vessel's designer, Stockton Rush.
Sonar devices dropped near the Titanic wreckage have detected banging noises. That's exactly the kind of signal the occupants of the vessel are meant to do in an emergency.
The discovery of the banging sound soon after the search began raised hopes they were still alive. But this is the first time we've actually heard them. So were the mysterious knocking sounds we're now hearing made by Titan passengers in their last desperate moments?
There was probably some forewarning for the passengers that they needed to resurface as quickly as possible, which is a horrible, chilling thought that they may have had some knowledge of what was about to happen to them.
The Titan imploded, killing all on board instantly.
Coming up, we'll hear from a billionaire who was supposed to be on board the doomed sub, but made the last-minute decision to back out. That's after the break.
This could be classified as an eerie view of a watery grave. The Coast Guard Marine Board of Investigation has just released video of part of the ill-fated Titan submersible. In June 2023, 5 people died on a private expedition to see the wreckage of the Titanic. About an hour and 45 minutes into its dive, the submersible called the Titan lost contact with its owners, OceanGate Expeditions. That sparked an international search for the Titan and her passengers, which concluded when the Coast Guard determined the submersible imploded.
This was a catastrophic implosion of the vessel, which would have generated a significant broadband sound down there that the sonar buoys would have picked up.
The newly released video shows the tail cone of the Titan on the sea floor. Next to it is a piece of carbon fiber. This footage was taken by a remotely operated vehicle and released as part of a 2-week-long hearing by the Coast Guard into the Titan implosion. The wreckage of the Titan was found about 990 feet from the bow of the Titanic. A Coast Guard spokesperson said human remains were recovered from the Titan ocean floor site. The remains were recovered and respectfully transported to the shore.
This Las Vegas billionaire and his son had planned to go on the fatal voyage of the submersible, but pulled out. OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush scoffed at their fears, texting, "It's way safer than flying in a helicopter or even scuba diving." My son's friend researched what could go wrong and put a little scare in him, financier Jay Bloom texted Rush. But Rush dismissed their fears as stupid stuff.
How do you feel about that now?
Stockton actually believed what he was saying. His intentions were good. He had a good heart. He was a good man. He believed in he drank his own Kool-Aid.
Seemingly desperate to fill empty seats, Rush offered Bloom and his son a $200,000 discount. Last-minute price is $150,000 per passenger, he wrote, but they passed. Instead, Jay Bloom and his son Sean's places were taken by Pakistani mogul Shahzada Dawood and his son.
I see that father and son that took the seats that we passed on. And but for the grace of God, that could be our picture.
Discovery Channel host Josh Gates took a test drive on the Titan and posted, "I walked away due to my safety concerns." BBC cameras captured the chilling moments on a voyage last year when it was discovered an engine had been, get this, put on backwards.
One of the thrusters is thrusting backwards right now.
Look at that passenger's reaction. The mission went ahead anyway. The most serious structural flaw may have been using carbon fiber and titanium in the pressure hull. Famed director James Cameron, whose film Titanic is the 4th most popular movie of all time, appeared on Good Morning America with Bob Ballard, the explorer who discovered the Titanic wreck.
The Achilles heel of the sub was the composite cylinder that was the main hull that the people were inside. That carbon fiber composite cylinder is now just in very small pieces.
Bob Ballard has known Stockton Rush for 20 years.
His dream was to go down and explore the Titanic, but unfortunately that dream turned into a nightmare.
Debris from the Titan was discovered just 500 yards from the Titanic.
The submersible is believed to have sustained a catastrophic implosion less than 2 hours after starting its descent. The 5 passengers apparently did not suffer. Death came to them in a flash, just 30 thousandths of a second. There are apparently no remains to recover. The bodies were disintegrated.
And we're learning that the youngest passenger, 19-year-old Suleiman Dawood, was terrified but agreed to go with his dad as a Father's Day gift. His distraught aunt appeared on the Today Show.
To know that my Sully didn't feel a moment's pain, that his brain didn't even realize, that's relief.
Coming up, an eerie coincidence between the wife of the sub's pilot and the Titanic.
It's an iconic moment in the movie Titanic. A devoted husband and wife face death together as the ship plummets beneath the surface. Incredibly, Wendy Rush, the wife of Stockton Rush, the controversial pilot of the ill-fated submersible, is the great-great-granddaughter of that real-life couple, Isidore and Ida Strauss. The Strausses were co-owners of the fabled Macy's department store. As seen in the movie, Ida refuses to leave the doomed ship on a lifeboat without her husband.
No! We've been together for 40 years, and where you go, I go.
This memorial to the couple in Manhattan is inscribed, "In their death, they were not divided." But today, the family is divided. Wendy Rush's cousin, Brett Gladstone, says he opposes tourist trips to the wreckage.
I've always been uncomfortable with the exploitation of the ship down there. I mean, over 1,000 people died. My great-great-grandmother's body was never found. It lies at the bottom. Her soul and the soul of over 1,000 people remain in a kind of graveyard.
John Lacasio's great-great-uncles were waiters on the ship and perished in the disaster 111 years ago.
Would you open up graves at a gravesite and rob it? I would certainly hope not. And that's exactly what they're doing with Titanic.
Shelley Binder's great-great-grandmother and her great-uncle, who was just a baby, both survived.
To pay $250,000 to put your life on the line, I wouldn't do it. It's beyond obsession.
And Titanic director James Cameron is also speaking out today, comparing the fate of the Titanic and that of the Titan.
I'm struck by the similarity of the Titanic disaster itself, where the captain was repeatedly warned about ice ahead of his ship, and for a very similar tragedy where warnings went unheeded to take place at the same exact site. It's really quite surreal.
If the Titanic could speak, it would say, enough is enough. Stop sending people down here.
Extreme tourism is on the rise, but will this accident change things? Let's take a look.
The tourist lost on the dive to the Titanic is putting a spotlight on extreme tourism around the world. For the right price, just about anyone can go anywhere. From $100,000 vacations at the South Pole to terrifying trips to Mexico's Cave of Swallows, the world's deepest cavern. These hazardous trips are targeted at adrenaline junkies. This is known as the plank walk, a 12-inch wide walkway over a steep cliff in China. Sometimes extreme vacations can go tragically wrong. In 2019, 22 people were killed on a visit to an active volcano in New Zealand when it erupted. Travel expert Pauline Frommer.
You've been on some of these trips yourself. Why do you do it?
I've climbed 2 volcanoes with my daughter. At the time, it felt like just something to do, something to try. We actually roasted marshmallows over the lava.
2023 is shaping up as the deadliest year on record on Mount Everest, a favorite destination for tourist adventurers. 12 have died and 5 are missing. Gordon Janow organizes Everest climbs for $70,000 a head.
It seems fantastic to go, under the ocean or climb a mountain or take a mountain bike, route that's challenging. But you need to go and assess the risks.
But what happened on that dive to the Titanic is a reminder that extreme tourism can have extreme consequences.
Will the Titan's catastrophic implosion mean the end of space tourism? This Thursday, Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic is set to launch its first 90-minute commercial space flight.
Oh, wow.
Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin, which famously flew Star Trek's William Shatner into space, plans a new launch later this year. And Elon Musk is expected to send more civilian crews into space following his successful all-civilian spaceflight in 2021, which orbited the Earth for 3 days. But today, many are questioning whether the doomed Titan Sub should serve as a warning to those willing to push space tourism. Boom, boom. Tech entrepreneur Lane Best took a space flight on Blue Origin with his son Cameron, calling it the ultimate father-son bonding experience.
Some people are comparing the trip on the ill-fated Titan Sub to the potential dangers of going up into space.
I could imagine some people would fear it, but I think space enthusiasts, adventurists like myself, make an assessment. You want to do your homework?
He says he was actually offered a spot on the doomed Titan.
I was actually considering being on that very sub. I was too busy, and if I did the same homework I did with Blue Origin, I probably might have passed.
Speaking out today is Christine Dowwood, who lost her husband and her 19-year-old son in the submersible disaster. She was on the host ship when she learned contact with the Titan had been lost.
When we passed the 96 hours mark, that's when I lost hope. And that's when I even then sent a message to my family on shore. I said, I'm preparing for the worst.
She says she was supposed to have been on the ill-fated sub, but gave up her seat to her son, who was excited to break the Guinness Book of World Records by solving the Rubik's Cube nearly 13,000 feet below as he viewed the Titanic wreckage. Lawyer Michelle Hanlon, who specializes in space law, says risks have to be taken.
This is what exploration is about. Humans take risks every single day. We need to support risk takers, especially when we're talking about exploring things like the deep seas and space. We need to keep a very light hand on regulation.
Thank you for watching. Inside Edition examines the Titanic. Stay with us for more Inside Edition content.